Konnichiwa. Today we're going back to Alice, and we're going to be using quite a lot of trains this time because I want us to really grasp the structure of these sentences. So, if you remember from last time, Alice had just entered the rabbit hole, and quite surprisingly, she finds herself falling very slowly down a vertical hole. 落ちる間に暇がたっぷりあって、周りをゆっくり見回せた。Now, I'm going to tell you what this means first, and then we're going to break it down. 落ちる間に。落ちる, as we know, is fall. 間 is a period of time, and it's also the space between two things. And obviously, a period of time is always, metaphorically speaking, and we can only really talk about time in spatial metaphors, a period of time is always a space between 2 points, isn't it? It has a beginning and it has an end. So, 落ちる間に means while she was falling, during the period of time while she was falling. Hima means free time, open time. It's a word you'll see quite often, and it can be used in both a positive or a negative sense. It can mean free time to do what you want to do, or it can mean empty time, being bored, having time hanging on your hands. Here, it just means having plenty of time available to look around, because she's falling, she can't do anything else, and she's falling rather slowly. Tappuri means in large quantities. It's another one of these re-ending adverbs that don't need ni. And it means in large quantities, in plentiful amounts, rather like pouring from a tap. Tappuri, in large quantities. And here it's an adverb describing the fact that the hima, the free time, exists. So the free time exists in large quantities. So that's our first logical clause, 落ちる間に, which simply sets the scene, the time for the action. It's an absolute time expression because it's a particular time, so it takes ni. 暇がたっぷりあった. There was a lot of free time. Now, the next part, 周りをゆっくり見回せた is interesting because this is another example of what we were talking about last week. Self-move, other-move pairs. Mawaru means to go around, move around. The rather childish name for a policeman is omawari-san, which means someone who goes around, someone who does the rounds. Mawasu means make something go around, to send something around, to cause it to go around. And of course, as we learned last week, we easily know which of the pair is a self-move word, going around, and which is the other move word, sending around, because the sending around one ends in su. Now, we don't actually have mawaru here, we have mawari. And as we've mentioned before, when we take the I stem of a verb and use it on its own, it usually becomes a noun. There is another use which we're not going to enter into right now, but in this case, it is becoming a noun. So what does mawari mean? Mawari can actually mean two things. It can be the noun form of mawaru, in which case it's going around, doing the rounds, and that's what we have in omawari-san, a policeman. He is someone who does the act of doing the rounds. Mawari is the act of doing the rounds, but it can also mean the surroundings. And in this case, it actually takes a different kanji to show that it's a slightly different meaning of the word. It's still the noun form of around, but in this case, it's the surroundings, not the act of going around. So, mawari o yukkuri mimawaseta means she could, in a leisurely manner, yukkuri, that adverb we learned last week, she could, in a leisurely manner, mimawasu. What does mimawasu mean? We know what mawasu means. It means to make something go around. Mi mawasu is attaching mawasu to the I stem of miru. We can't actually tell it's the I stem because this is an ichidan verb and all ichidan stems look the same as we know. But we know that this is in fact the renyo ke, the I stem, because that's the one that gets used for attaching verbs to other verbs. So mimawasu means literally send your looking around, send your eye beams around the place, make your looking go around. So mawari wo mimawasu is look around the place, send your eye beams, send your looking around the place. And mimawaseru is, as we've seen, the potential form of mimawasu. So what this is saying is because a lot of time existed, she was able to leisurely send her looking around the surroundings. Mazu wa shita wo mite mita kedo, kurasugite nani mo mienakatta. First of all, she tried looking down, but it was too dark, so nothing was visible, nothing could be seen. Mazu wa means, first of all, mazu is from the start, from the beginning. Mazu wa shita o mite mita. Now, shita o miru is looking down, looking at the down. We know that in Japanese, down is always a noun, don't we? So you look at the down. Shita o miru. But it doesn't say miru here, it says mite mita. And this is a form of speech that we're going to find a great deal. When we add miru to the te form of another verb, what we're doing is saying, try doing something. Literally, we're saying, do it and see. So, tabete miru means eat it and see. Have a taste of it. Do you like this? I don't know. Tabete mite kudasai. Try it, taste it, eat it and see. We often say, yatte miru, I'll give it a try. I'll try and see what happens. Yaru is a more casual form of suru, and you can say shitte miru, especially in more formal circumstances, but more often we say yatte miru. Give it a try, give it a go, do it and see. So here we're actually using miru with miru. Mite miru, try having a look, take a look, have a look and see. So, shita o mite mita kedo, kurasugite. Kurai is dark, and sugiru, as we've talked about before, means going by, going beyond. So in this case, sugiru means too much, going in excess of. In other words, it was too dark. It was excessively dark. It was too dark. Kurasugite. Nani mo mienakatta. Nani mo means even as much as something, nani mo. And I've done a video on these uses of mo, which you might want to watch. Nani mo mienakatta. Now, miru is see, mieru is be able to see. And if we look at the trains here, we've got to have a ga marked subject in this second clause. Nani mo zero ga mienakatta. What is the zero in this case? If we're looking at it in English terms, we might think it's Alice. Alice couldn't see anything. But in Japanese, it will usually, in fact, be nani, which is a thing, something. Nothing was able to be seen. Nothing could be seen. Because usually with expressions like mieru, mienai, kikoeru, kikoenai, be able to hear, be able to see, we apply it not to the person who is able to see, but to the thing that's able to be seen. And of course we've covered this, haven't we, in our lesson on the potential. Sono ato, as we know, means after. We've had it in following after someone, but it also means after in the other sense. After that, sono means that. Sono ato means after that. So again, this is just a time expression, setting it in time. And this time it's a relative time expression. After that, after a particular thing. So it doesn't need ni. Sono ato, ana no mawari wo mite. So now she's not looking down. This means the surroundings, again, mawari, of the whole, omite. So after that, she looked at the surroundings of the whole. Mei ni tomaru no wa gishiri naranda todana ya hondana datta. Right, so this is quite complex. The first clause is simple enough. Sono ato ana no mawari o mite. After that, she looked at the surroundings of the whole. The second clause has quite a lot for us to consider. Mei ni tomaru no wa means literally the thing that stopped in her eye. Now this is a similar expression to in English the thing that caught her eye, isn't it? Various things passed through her eye, passed through her vision, and the thing that stopped there was what we're going to talk about. But we also need to look at this use of no. As we've seen before, no is like apostrophe S in English. So if we say Sakura no doresu, we're saying Sakura's dress. Now also, just as in English, if you say which dress do you like best, suppose that Sakura and Mary are both wearing dresses, and you say which dress do you like best, in English you might say Sakura's. I like Sakura's best. You could say Sakura's dress, but you don't have to. You can just say Sakura's. And it's the same in Japanese. You can say Sakura no, Sakura's, the one that belongs to Sakura. But this can be taken much further in Japanese, and I've done a whole video about this particular use of no, which you can look at if you want to go deeper. But in this case, the way it's taken further is mei ni tomaru no. This is the thing, the one that stopped in her eye. Which dress do you like best? Sakura's. Sakura's one, Sakura's thing, Sakura's dress. Mei ni tomaru no, the thing, the one that stopped in her eye. So, ana no mawari o mite, mei ni tomaru no wa. Looking at the surroundings of the whole, the thing that stopped in her eye was, and what it was gishiri naranda todana ya hondana datta. Gishiri is yet another one of these re-ending adverbs that don't need ni. Gishiri means tightly packed. Naranda is the past tense of narabu, which means lined up. So gishiri naranda means tightly lined up, packed together, lined up and packed together. Gishiri naranda todana ya hondana datta. Right, well, we'll get to that ya in just a moment. But todana ya hondana. The word for a shelf in Japanese is tana. And when we add something before it to tell us what kind of a shelf it is, we use that 10-10 hooking that we've talked about before. So the ta becomes da. Todana, that to means door. So literally, todana is a door shelf. And that is the Japanese word for a cupboard. And it's quite a good word. I think that's what a cupboard really is, isn't it? Shelves with a door. It's a better way of saying cupboard than the English way, which says it's a board on which you put cups, which isn't quite what a cupboard is. Hondana is even easier. It's quite literally a bookshelf. Now this ya is something we need to cover. When you want to say and something else, how do you say it in Japanese? We know that when you're putting two clauses together, we use the te form, or sometimes we use other things like demo. In English, we use and in all cases. We say bread and butter, pencil and paper. We also say I went to the baker's and bought some bread. But in Japanese, we don't use the same and in the two cases. We already know some of the ways we can and two clauses together, but when we're anding two things together, there are two ways to do it. And one is to use the to particle. We know that the to particle is the quotation particle, but it's also the and particle. So if we want to say pen and book, we say pen to hon. But we can also use the ya particle, so we can say to or ya when we want to and together two or more objects. What's the difference? Well, as a matter of fact, it's a very useful difference and one that we could do it in English. To is an exclusive and. If I say, what's in that box? And you answer, pen to enpitsu, pens and pencils. You are telling me that there are pens and pencils and nothing else in that box. If you say pen ya enpitsu, you're saying there are pens and pencils and there might also be something else. And very often you're implying that there is something else, because you're avoiding using the exclusive and. So what stopped in her eye was the fact that cupboards and bookshelves, among other things, were tightly lined around the walls. Tana no hitotsu kara bin wo torioroshita. Tana no hitotsu. Hitotsu means one. Kara is a particle meaning from. So here she's using tana on its own, shelves, and because it's not joined to anything, it's tana, not dana. And so she's saying from one of the shelves, tana no hitotsu kara, from one of the shelves. Notice here that tana no hitotsu is really just the same as English, one of the shelves. Tana no hitotsu. Tana no hitotsu kara bin wo tori oroshita. Now, toru means take, and orosu, the kanji, as you can see, is the kanji for down. And again, this is part of a move pair, self-move, other move pair, which is why I introduced them early. Most courses will regard that as an intermediate thing, self-move and other move, but I think it makes it much easier to recognize what words are doing if you're aware of this. Oriru means come down, step down, you come down the stairs, come off a bus. Orosu means bring down, and once again, we know which is the other move one. You bring something else down, that's the one that ends in su, orosu. So, tori orosu means take and bring down. Tana no hitotsu kara bin wo tori oroshita. From one of the shelves, she took down. Bin usually gets translated as bottle. In fact, in this case, I think it was more of a jar. What was in it? Well, we'll have to wait till next time to find out. Now, before we go, there's something I want to ask you, because I want your input on the direction of this course. You may have noticed a few changes this time. The most obvious of them is that I am not using romaji for Japanese words anymore. I've been asked to do this, and also it's what I think I should be doing, because it's structurally very important to start thinking of Japanese in kana terms, not in romaji terms. And if we're in training for reading real Japanese, which we are, it's important to start reading it in kana and kanji as far as possible. I will continue to use furigana prominently for all the kanji, but if I use romaji, it interferes with the process of your recognizing and ingesting Japanese, because your mind will jump to the thing it finds most comfortable and easily recognizable. That's the way it works. We can't stop that happening. So if this is helpful to you, please let me know in the comments below. If it's unhelpful to you, if it's making it harder for you to follow the explanations, then let me know that too, because I need to know that. But remember that if you need to pause at any point, you should be pausing the video. If you need to take a minute to take things in, to read the extra information on the screen, to work out the kana, if you're still a little bit slow on that, please use the pause button. I do take things quite fast. There is a lot of information in these videos, and I do that on the assumption that you are able to pause the video whenever you need to. There's nothing wrong in doing that. Don't think you're being slow. The videos are made with that assumption in mind. Thank you. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels, who make these videos possible. And I'd like to thank all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Class dismissed.